Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video here on the Parker Love Sports YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going over a 2025 NFL mock draft for the Denver Broncos because I'm a draft addict. I love the NFL draft. It is my favorite event of the year. I love how it brings college football and the NFL together, my two favorite sports. Well, I don't know, because I love hockey too. Hockey is up there with in my top three, but I love football, hockey, or NFL, college football, and hockey. And this day brings together college football and the NFL, and it's the future for the franchises, and you're hoping to get the next generation of future stars to help your team succeed to reach that coveted Super Bowl. Now, I will say this is way too early. These prospects are going to rise and they're going to fall. We still have a whole season of college football to evaluate these prospects. And going along with that, this isn't their full evaluations. I haven't dived into these guys, or I guess dove into these guys deeper to understand who they are as prospects, and they still have another year to prove themselves. This is just for fun, to maybe get you guys on the radar of some of these prospects to maybe potentially watch out for this upcoming season. And yeah, I just love the NFL draft, and I figure because I'm going out of town for a couple of days, I figured why not give you my way too early Broncos mock draft, my first one, I guess 1.0. Well, I won't count this as 1.0. I'd say it's the way too early one. But yeah, I wanted to do my way too early roster prediction. I decided I'm going to wait till I get back into town to do that. But for right now, we're jumping into my way too early 2025 NFL mock draft for the Denver Broncos. Let's go ahead and let's get started. But of course, first things first, I do have to remind you that Jesus is King. I pray that you give your life to him as he has got a plan and a purpose for you. And I just truly hope that you accept Jesus with your whole heart and believe that he died on the cross for your sins, because if you do, then you'll go to heaven. It's that simple and it's that easy. It's solely through our faith in Jesus which gets us to heaven. It's not through our works. It's not through going to church these many times, or it's not through it's not through our works. It's not through going to church. It's not through reading our Bible daily. Yes, those things are good and we should want to do those things, but it's solely through the works of Jesus and what he did on the cross by living the perfect life. He never sinned, sacrificing himself on the cross, dying for our sins, and being resurrected from the dead 3 days later. And if you truly believe that, then you'll go to heaven. It's that simple and it's that easy. And it's important to me as a Christian to share this message. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I don't care because it's important to me, and no matter how big of a platform or how small of a platform I have, I'm going to continue to share the good news and the gospel of Jesus. And so if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but it's important to me, so I'm going to continue to share it before every single one of my videos. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump in to my way too early 2025 NFL mock draft for the Denver Broncos. And here are our draft picks for the 2025 NFL draft. Remember, if you do enjoy this video, to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm hoping to do this as a career one day, so if you could help me reach my goal by subscribing to the channel, leaving a like to push the video out to more people, that would mean the absolute world to me. Now, that being said, let's look at our draft picks here. We have our own first round pick, our own second round pick, our own third round pick, and our own fourth round pick, as well as our own sixth round pick. We don't have our own fifth or seventh round pick, but we do have a sixth round pick from the Philadelphia Eagles, in which when we sent Albert Okwuegbunam to the Eagles, we received that sixth round pick back. So we got 2 sixths in this upcoming draft. And of course, we could also pick up some more picks. Depending on how well we do, we might sell some pieces off at the deadline and pick up more picks. So this is currently as of May 10th, Friday, May 10th, these are our current draft picks. Now, with our first round pick, it is going to be third overall, and these are based off of Vegas odds, and essentially every single simulator has these odds because it's based on reverse Super Bowl odds. So the Super Bowl favorite's going to have the last pick, and the Super Bowl long shots are going to have the first pick. They're giving us the third pick, which would be interesting, and I've seen a lot of people make mock drafts where the Broncos take a quarterback here. I don't think that's going to happen. I like Bo Nix over a majority of the quarterbacks in this year's class, if I'm honest, just based off what I've seen so far. And if we have the third pick, there's a variety of different options we could go. We could go Luther Burden, pick up another weapon for Bo Nix. We could go on defense. We could look at Will Campbell, the best corner, Mason Graham, the best interior defensive lineman. There's a couple places we could go. Could even trade back and pick up more picks. But I'm going with Will Campbell, offensive tackle out of LSU. Campbell is one of 2 elite tier tackles so far that we know of in this class. Of course, some people could rise up. These guys could fall off, the other being Kelvin Banks out of Texas. But Will Campbell, he is a solid pass and run blocker. He's kind of a balance of both. Kelvin Banks, he's solid as a run blocker, but he's a dominant pass blocker. And I think that Sean Payton wants to get a guy who's dominant in both run and pass blocking, and that's going to be Will Campbell. Plus, he does play left tackle for the LSU Tigers, and that's where I think he would slot in. I think that Garrett Bowles most likely won't return after this season, and so we need another blindside protector for Bo Nix. Look, we have some solid weapons. I won't say they're the craziest or the greatest weapons, but with Troy Franklin, we got Sutton, who knows for how long. We got Josh Reynolds on a 2-year contract, Marvin Mims. The weapons are decent, and I think we could pick up a guy potentially later, but I want Bo Nix to be protected. I don't want him to have to worry about getting sacked or forcing an injury because he's getting hit so many times, and Will Campbell is one of those elite tier offensive tackles. We haven't drafted an offensive tackle since we drafted Garrett Bowles in the first round in 2017. I believe I saw that stat somewhere. And selecting Will Campbell, this would make Bo Nix a lot safer. You know, who knows if we're going to have the 3rd pick. Maybe we'll have to trade up for him. Maybe he'll fall. I don't know. But I kind of want to tackle. Will Campbell is one of 2 elite, I guess not elite, but 2 offensive tackles that will be drafted in the upcoming 2025 NFL draft. Right now, both of them are slated as first-round picks. Of course, Will Campbell is one. Emory Jones is the other. But to me, I want that blind. I guess, would it be a blind? Yeah, it would be Bo Nix's blindside protector in Will Campbell. Here, he is 6'6", 320 pounds, and he is a junior this upcoming season. So he could return, but if he's slated to be a top pick, I think he will declare for the NFL draft. I will say, watching, I hate to admit this because they're our division rivals, but watching how the Chargers have built up that offensive line with Rashawn Slater, who's a very solid tackle, Joe Alt, who projects to be a solid tackle, their offensive line looks solid to protect their quarterback in Justin Herbert. I believe in Bo Nix, and if Bo Nix turns out to be the real deal, we need to protect him. Mike McGlinchey's contract is kind of unmovable for the next couple of seasons. Hopefully he can improve his play, but Will Campbell, I think, would be an impact player. You would select him, you would start him, and he would be a top-tier tackle for you in the NFL. Next up, in the 2nd round pick, 235, I think I have to do this just out of respect, but it's going to be Tez Johnson, wide receiver out of Oregon, and that is because Tez Johnson is Bo Nix's adopted brother. That's right, they're brothers. The Nix family adopted Tez Johnson, so for the storyline, I had to do it. Right now, Johnson is slated as a 2nd round pick. Of course, he could have a monster season at Oregon. They got Dylan Gabriel there. They got Evan Stewart, I believe. It's Evan Stewart who's there now. Solid 1-2 tandem. Johnson could easily rise, could fall, could stay where he is. Now, the thing about Tez Johnson is he is on the smaller side. He's 5'10", 160 pounds, which is very, very small. In terms of the weight at 160, you would like him to put on some more weight probably. But the thing about Tez Johnson is he would most likely play from the slot, which would be interesting because I would be curious if we do select Tez Johnson, what Marvin Mims' role would be. Of course, could still easily be a punt returner, could move to the outside potentially, but just for the storyline purposes, I had to select Tez Johnson. It would be so cool to see him team up with Bo Nix and then have Bo Nix have his brother and Tez Johnson as a receiver, as well as, of course, Troy Franklin being another one of his receivers. But you can see he's currently playing with Oregon last season and this season, and then the 3 previous seasons he played with Troy. And those 50 games between Troy and Oregon, he has 220 receptions for 2,991 yards, averaged about 13.2 yards per reception, and scored 18 touchdowns in his career. Now moving on to the 3rd round, I have the Denver Broncos selecting Luke Lachey, tight end out of Iowa. This was one of those guys who could have come out this season in the draft, could have declared for this season, or I guess could have declared for the draft last season, decides to go back to Iowa for another season. And Luke Lachey is one of those guys who I am eyeing up to be a potential target for the Denver Broncos. Now, he does need to improve on his blocking a little bit. I don't think he's the greatest blocker from what I've seen so far, but I think he is a solid receiving tight end. Needs to obviously develop, of course, but I do think he could be the next solid tight end out of Iowa. I mean, there's so many solid tight ends that have come out of Iowa. Of course, you think of George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, Sam Laporta has burst onto the scene. There's, of course, Noah Fant, too, who the Broncos have drafted. Luke Lachey is a very, very solid tight end. And to me, I'm surprised the Broncos didn't address the tight end position in the draft this year. Look, I like Dulcich. He's a solid receiving threat at tight end, but he needs to stay healthy and get on the field. Troutman is a solid, balanced tight end. Can be a receiver, can be a blocker. And then you got other guys, Nate Atkins, Lucas Kroll. You brought in Dylan Leonard and a couple other guys as undrafted free agents. But to me, if Dulcich can't stay healthy, I think we have to look, sorry for hitting the mic, we have to look at the tight end position. And Luke Lachey is one of my favorite tight ends in this entire draft. I'm looking at the list over here of guys. I think there's two guys maybe I like over him so far in the way too early pre-draft process, but man, it's tough. I really like Luke Lachey as a prospect, and I'm kind of hoping the Broncos do too by the time the 2025 draft gets here. But you can see during his career with Iowa, he's played in 29 games, has only 46 receptions. I say only, that's a decent amount. 662 yards, average about 14.4 yards per reception, and has scored 4 touchdowns in his career. I'm hoping he goes off with Iowa this season. I believe Cade McNamara is still the quarterback at Iowa, so we'll have to see. But I really like Luke Lachey as a prospect, and we'll see what he does. One of my favorite tight ends in the pre-draft process for the Broncos to potentially target. Next up here in the 4th round, I have the Denver Broncos selecting Parker Brailsford, center out of Alabama. Of course, you see him in a Washington Huskies uniform. That's because he was at Washington last year and followed his head coach, Kalen DeBoer, to Alabama and is now the Alabama Crimson Tide center. And he is one of those guys who I could easily see rising up the draft boards and being picked way earlier, potentially in the 2nd, 3rd round on day 2, maybe slides into day 1 even. We'll have to see. Of course, it's impossible to predict how these prospects are going to rise and fall this season, but Brailsford is 6'2", 275 pounds, and he's a redshirt sophomore. Now, here's the thing. The Broncos, we need a center, in my opinion. I know we have Alex Forsyth, and he's Bo Nix's old center at Oregon 2 seasons ago. We'll have to see how he plays. I mean, he's a 7th round pick. I like the upside of Alex Forsyth, and maybe he surprises everyone and is a solid starting center. There's Luke Wattenberg as well, of course. We drafted Nick Gargiulo in the 7th round this season. Brought in Calvin Throckmorton, who looks to be a guard, can play center as well. He's someone who I liked out of Oregon in the 2020 draft. But to me, if Alex Forsyth doesn't pan out, you have to build this offensive line around Bo Nix. Of course, we just drafted Will Campbell in the 1st round. Now we have to draft that anchor and the guy who's going to be Bo Nix's center for hopefully his entire career, the guy who's going to anchor that whole offensive line. And Brailsford is one of the top centers in this entire class. I'm trying to think here. I guess I'm looking here to see if there's any other top centers, and I think that Brailsford might be the best center in the class. I might be forgetting someone, but if Forsyth doesn't work out, if Wattenberg doesn't work out, I'm definitely looking at Brailsford to be a Bronco or potentially even another center in this class. It just happens to be Brailsford in this mock draft. Next up, here in the 6th round, our first of 2 6th-round picks, I have us selecting Xavian Sorey, linebacker out of Arkansas. Of course, you can see he's in a Georgia Bulldogs uniform, transferred to Arkansas this season, and he's a project right now. He is a project. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. He's a solid pass coverage inside backer, so he's got that ability to cover the middle. Needs to work on his run defense and tackling. I mean, his tackling as a whole, wrapping up and bringing him to the ground isn't the problem, but needs to essentially get in there, have a nose for the football to make plays and stop the run. Isn't the best pass rusher, which honestly is fine for me because we typically tend to draft inside linebackers and then they get moved to the edge position. Baron Browning in 2021. Then you have Drew Sanders, potentially, we'll have to see. With the drafting of Jonah Ellis, maybe Drew Sanders stays inside, but the fact that he's not the greatest pass rusher is fine with me. I think mostly he's going to be an off-ball coverage guy. And then he needs to obviously help support in the run game. Of course, he could potentially raise his draft stock this season, transferring to Arkansas. Drew Sanders did the same thing, kind of. He was an edge at Alabama, then transfers to Arkansas and moves to an off-ball linebacker. But yeah, Xavian Sorey is a guy who I think has a lot of upside and a lot of promise as a prospect. And we'll see. Maybe he will go way earlier because he had a great season, which would be awesome to see. But in 27 games with the Georgia Bulldogs so far, hasn't played a game with Arkansas yet. He has 19 solo tackles, 5 assist tackles, 24 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1 interception, and 1 pass defended. And don't let those stats deceive you. The 1 pass defended and 1 interception, that doesn't mean he can't cover. I won't say he's the greatest coverage linebacker, but I think he's decent. Decent, and he shows upside and promise there. A lot of tools that you'd like to see from Sorey. Just needs to put them all together as a prospect. And now finally, moving on to our final 6th-round pick. This is a guy, if you were here on the Day 3 NFL Draft stream, it was me and a couple other guys. We're chatting up. This happened, I think, right before we traded for John Franklin Myers. I was looking at potential draftees for the Denver Broncos, and Thor Griffith, which, by the way, is one of the leading candidates already for one of the best names in the 2025 NFL Draft, came up. And we started to look into him, and he might be the best run defender in the class. He is a big guy at 6'2", 305 pounds. Of course, he's at Louisville now, but was at Harvard for his first 3 seasons. And yeah, he eats up blockers. Of course, we'll have to see how that transfers to the ACC with Louisville. But if he can still be that elite run defender that he was in college, I think that's going to be great for the Broncos. We need as many run defenders as we can. But not only that, he also provides interior pressure as a pass rusher. Now, of course, this was in the Ivy League, so we'll have to see how that translates to the next level. That's kind of why he's sitting around here in the 6th round range. Could easily improve his draft stock, but Thor Griffith, he's one of my guys who I'm looking out for in the 2025 NFL Draft. I might have been saying 2024 a little bit here in this video. Still trying to adjust to 2025 for the NFL Draft. But yeah, Thor Griffith could easily be one of those top guys. Maybe he doesn't start right away, but he's got the traits to defend the run, to eat up blocks, to provide interior pass rush. So to me, Thor Griffith could easily increase his draft stock. It just depends on how he plays at Louisville. But yeah, I mean, I know we got John Franklin Myers. We have Zach Allen. We do have DJ Jones, but drafting Thor Griffith, I think, even though he's a 6th-round pick, if he keeps his production up, I could see him being our potential starting nose tackle next season if we trade away DJ Jones. I can't remember how many years he has left on his contract, but if we do trade away DJ Jones, yeah, I think Thor Griffith could be one of those sneaky guys in this draft. Keep an eye on him at Louisville this season. Could easily raise his draft stock. Played in 30 games with Harvard, had 50 solo tackles, 53 assist tackles, 103 total tackles. He had 3.5 sacks and 1 forced fumble during his career at Harvard. And that is going to be my first mock draft. It's the way too early mock draft. This isn't 1.0. We're going to start the in-season mock drafts. You should probably see my next mock draft. Well, I might do a full first round, way too early mock draft soon. We'll have to see potentially. But my next full Denver Broncos first round mock draft, that will occur maybe after the preseason, before week 1, or maybe a couple weeks into the season. We'll have to see. But next up, that will be my way too early Denver Broncos final 53 roster prediction. That should come out in a couple days. I'm only going out of town for a couple days, so this video is to be put out there while I'm out of town, and then I'm hopefully going to be coming back, make my way too early Denver Broncos final 53-man roster prediction video, as well as some other videos as we lead up to training camp. Rookie minicamp should be starting up soon. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. My name is Parker. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.